I'm ready when you are, man.
I believe I'm good to go. So first things first, we're not going to go through last week's homework on an individual personal basis just because it would be way too much. And obviously, if you're going through the 5 buckets, that's a lot of personal stuff that you probably don't want to share with everybody. But from here on out, the homework is kind of going to be like the honor system. That's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is stuff that we're doing with our clients one-on-one. So I think it'll definitely benefit you guys to do it. You don't have to share it with anybody, but it's going to be the honor system. I truly believe it'll help you if you do it. If you choose not to, that's totally up to you. But it definitely has made a huge change for Alan and myself, and that's why we're strategically picking the things we're going through here.
If you go, so if you weren't here last week, sorry to interrupt you, Kev.
Oh, no,
we did the 5 buckets. So real quick, we did nostalgia bucket, maintenance bucket, mentee bucket, growth bucket, and wisdom bucket. And basically, for those of you who weren't here last week, it's a good way to understand your different relationships in your life. And if you're not making progress towards your goals and dreams, it's most likely because the nostalgia and maintenance buckets are probably more full than, some of the more growth-oriented buckets. And so, Kev, that dropped. If someone wasn't on the mastermind last week, that'll be dropping Tuesday at noon, right?
Yes. So 11 noon.
Okay.
It'll be dropping in the morning. So that's the other thing too. Just our goal is to use these as episodes because we've been waiting to get to 5 episodes for months. And we talk about manifestation and law of attraction. We've been talking about this for a year, doing like a live mastermind and having amazing people join and repurposing that as an episode. That's the other reason why I don't want you guys to be airing out your dirty laundry necessarily. That's something that Alan and I do, and we're willing to talk about everything. Not everybody's that way. Not everybody should be that way. So as long as everybody is cool with us using this as an episode, if you're nervous, you can mute and you can turn your screen off as well. We're not going to be offended by that. But the goal is to have as much value as we can. And that's always our goal, to share value with as many people as we can possible. So we're going to try to repurpose this as long as everybody is cool with that.
Amy, do you mind doing me a favor? And are you able to message the person on the iPhone and figure out who that is?
I can't without either admitting them or removing them.
No,
I was just going to ask you guys about that.
I can mess.
Are you able to message them?
Everyone in the waiting room, and they're the only person.
Yeah. So Amy, if you click on the Manage Participants tab, there's a message button for the waiting room.
I just sent one real quick.
All right, awesome. Thank you. We're trying to make sure these stay super secure, so we're trying to make sure we know everybody in the group.
Yeah. Can you teach later on?
Yes, absolutely. All right, so here we go. Do you want to start, Kev?
Yeah, so I'll actually screen share and show you guys. This is something that Alan and I kind of created. I've never seen anything like this. And the only reason it got created is because Alan and I are this. So it'll make sense when I show it to you. So today we are going through, let me just make sure I have the right screen. Can you see what I'm showing you?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, buddy.
What we are going through today is the Drive to 5. It's weird because I can't see you guys. I don't like it. The Drive to 5 is basically a measure of self-confidence and self-esteem. On the 0 side, this is where I was when I started this journey. I was very low in confidence. I was terrified to ask for help. I was always afraid to start things because I wasn't confident that I could finish them. I was very pessimistic because, again, I didn't have much belief in myself. And if you're low on the Drive to 5, you require action to gain confidence. So when we started this, Alan was on the other side. He was on the 10 side. And he was, at times, confident without results. He didn't think he needed help at some times. Again, I don't want to, just say that Alan is all of this, but
it's okay, brother.
Definitely had a perfection bias for sure. Overly optimistic, I would say, assuming that like nothing will ever go wrong or thinking that it ever could go wrong. And then the opposite of the 0, he needs action to be humbled. Now, what you're going to see is there's going to be this theme of action being super important in everything we talk about. So today we're going to talk about this, what it means to you, but also comfort zones. Also what to do if you're a 0 or a 10. The goal is to get to 5. 5 is balanced. That means you're confident, but you know you don't know everything. You know that you need help, but from the right people. You don't have a perfection bias. It means that you understand that it's more important to drop something than it is to wait for it to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect, ever. And you take action because it's the right thing to do. Now, you don't need to take action to build the confidence. You don't need it to be humbled. But it's kind of weird because you do afterwards. So that's something that Alan and I have found out from speeches. I'm always super nervous before a speech. Alan is always super calm. I usually prep way more than Alan does. And then after we're doing our D class after, and it's like, Alan's like, yeah, man, I definitely should have prepped more. And I'm always like super happy. Like, oh my God, I crushed that. That was amazing. So this started because I was super low. I had no confidence, and Alan was very, very confident. Now, if you guys are low on, and again, this doesn't always, I'll preface this. This doesn't mean you don't have any potential. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you can't succeed, any of that stuff, because I was a 0, and it's always my goal to help people that are down there. You're going to need to build confidence. And I'm going to show you in a slide after about what you actually have to do to build that confidence. If you're a 10, you want to get around somebody who is humble. It's your goal to build humility. You already have the confidence. You need to build humility now and understand that you don't know everything. The problem with a lot of this is if you're a 0, you tend to want to hang out with zeros because it's very uncomfortable for you to be around somebody who is way more confident than you. You might see them as arrogant. You're not going to want to listen to them, and it's going to feel like a weird place for you to be. And if you're a 10 and you're super, super confident, you're not necessarily going to want to spend time around somebody who doesn't have confidence because they're not like you. And that, I think we're all guilty of that at some time in our lives, where if you go to like a networking event, I tend to find I'll go up to the guy who's in shape 9 times out of 10. Why? Because we have something in common. So to me, it's like, okay, I can blend in with this person. Same with lack of confidence. If you go to an event, you see somebody, if you're lacking confidence and you see somebody in the corner, you might go right to them. Where Alan might go up to the guy who's like trying to get on the stage. So not only is it important to know yourself, but if you want to influence somebody, you have to know where they are. So Alan and I are always doing a running tally of this when we meet people. For you guys that are in Hyper Conscious Nation, this was one of the questions that we asked. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in terms of your confidence level? There's a reason we're asking, because the more we know about you guys, the more we can cater our content. And the other thing too is, I know a lot of people who think they're like a 7 or 8 when they're really like a 2 or 3. And until you become brutally honest with yourself, you can't make the changes necessary. So that is basically the drive to 5 in a nutshell. Alan.
Kev, do you mind? I just got a lot of stuff on the whiteboard here that I want to speak to, and strong work on that intro, man. So if you stop sharing your screen, although do you even need to stop sharing your screen for them to see mine?
I don't know. I'm going to stop anyway.
Okay. Look at the full house here. Okay, guys. So strong work on that, Kev. Over here in the 0 end, as Kevin mentioned, the best way I've found to try to explain this is these people are too afraid to get a mentor. These people don't think they need one. Okay? That's arrogant. If you think you don't need a mentor, I'm telling you, you are wrong, 100%. And I've been there before. If you're over here and you're too afraid to get one, you won't take action. To me, the drive to 5 is a human protection mechanism. Self-doubt, I believe, is stopping you from taking action. If you don't believe you can do it, I don't even have to try, therefore I don't have to have the pain. If arrogance, I believe, is also protecting you from feedback. You want to think you're awesome by default, and going and giving a speech in front of 1,000 people for the first time, if you think you're awesome before that, trust me, you won't after. Now, this is the interesting thing, right? So understanding where you're at and then being proactive with action. So action is the cure-all. Action is going to take you from delusional to reality. One example is we went to HPA, which is called High Performance Academy, in 2018 to see Brendan Burchard. Brendan Burchard's a huge hero of mine. He's spent a decade in this industry speaking on stages. When I saw him live, I thought I was a great speaker, right? I tend to default over here. So if I don't take a lot of action, I'm not giving a lot of speeches, I tend to think I'm a great speaker. When you see Brendan Burchard live, you realize real quick, like you have work to do. So Kevin was over here before HPA, and we both went to HPA. We took action. He ended up actually arrogant, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
He came back thinking he was amazing. He finally found his people, like all that stuff. I came back so upset. I ended up crying and telling Kevin, please don't leave me. Like, I love you, brother, all that stuff. Here's the interesting thing. I went in thinking I'm already a great speaker, and I saw Brendan Burchard and went, oh my God, you have work to do. Kevin went in thinking he doesn't belong in the personal development world, and then he came back realizing not only does he belong, but he can connect with anybody. So he gains, this is all perception. This is the perception, the 5 is the reality. And so the key is to understand where you're at, and this is a self-awareness exercise here. So again, self-doubt, lack of confidence, pessimistic, action. You need action to gain confidence over here. Here, you're arrogant, you're confident without results, you're overly optimistic, and you need action to be humbled. What's interesting is fast forward a year later, 2019, we're in San Diego at Brendan Burchard's event. It's called Influencer. I don't know if it's Influencer Academy or just Influencer. As a matter of fact, in my water bottle, this is what I got there. It says Influencer right here. But the opposite happened. Kevin was having a really hard time at that event because he was over here and then met some really incredible people there. I was over here and I realized, and this was not an ego thing, at least it didn't feel that way for me. I went from HPA being like, oh my God, I have so much work to do, coming home. And then in 2019, when I was in that room at Influencer, I actually felt like I had put in so many reps. We started doing 4 episodes a week. I had done more speeches, hosted events. I actually felt, I told Kevin, I said, this is not an ego thing. I feel like I belong on that stage now. I'm ready. And that didn't feel, it's interesting because in 2018, I went from here all the way to like self-doubt. And then in 2019, I actually went in humble and then ended up over here realizing that I built confidence. And so for everyone here, I just want to say that E's, who are more emotionally driven, who care more about the experience than the result. A good analogy I would use is like when you go into a coffee shop, are you more focused on the stimulant of the caffeine and what that will bring you, or are you focused on the taste of the coffee? For me, it's always the caffeine. And so for me, I don't care if it's black coffee. I use black because I don't want the extra calories, and I'm only doing it for the caffeine because I want the stimulant to stimulate my mind. So I'm very, very results driven. Okay, so you're either results driven as an M, or you're experience driven. And people who are results driven tend to crave significance. People who are experience driven tend to crave love and connection more. We all have both, but we are all righty or lefty. So for all of you right now, we want you thinking about like, which end of Drive to 5 are you on and why? If you crave love and experience much more, you want to get around an M who's very mastery driven and cares more about results because they're going to help you elevate your results. If you're very focused on significance and might have an ego, you're going to me, it's strength and warmth. Over here, you have warmth and compassion. Over here, you have strength. Now, arrogance is fake strength. And honestly, self-doubt is fake warmth. How do we get to 5 where we're strong as hell, but we're also super warm and compassionate? How do we get to 5 where we're super confident, we have undying self-belief, but we're also humble and realize we're not there yet?
I think the other thing too is, like Alan said, I legitimately came back cocky from HPA because for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not the problem. It's actually a good thing. You will self-correct over time because the air feels different. You can tell, like, that's not something I would normally say. And like, why is Alan crying? I mean, what's going on right now? Like telling me not to leave. Like, where am I going to go, man? No, we're good. But so both of us said that. He's like, why do I feel the way I feel? And I'm thinking to myself, like, why do I feel the way I feel? That's not normal for me. You will self-correct. So know this. And I've noticed this from people I know, from clients. When you go to, let's just say, a networking event, you get way out of your comfort zone, you're going to be more confident and you're going to start to question a lot of things. Wait a week and see what happens. Now, don't wait a week to take action. Like, I think you should take action, but don't go like making any crazy decisions right off the bat because you are under the influence of confidence, which is a good thing a lot of the times. But if you don't have the it's like a weapon you've never used before. That's what I was doing. I was just like, oh, I'm confident. This is great. I don't know what to do with it, but it feels good. So you usually will self-correct from our experience. Alan, do you want me to show the confidence conundrum? I know
Yes,
you're
please.
about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and also, I just want to say real quick, if anyone, and I don't know if this is true with Zoom logistics, but I think if you click on my screen while I'm in front of the whiteboard, I just want to make sure everyone can see this. I know it can get a little glary in here, but if you click on my screen, does it make it bigger so that you can see the whiteboard? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure everyone can see it. Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the confidence conundrum. Everybody can see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So like we were talking about, and I think this is how it always is. It's always going to be this way. So I'll get deeper into that. But everybody starts with the uncertainty of results. Like Alan and I have no idea how this mastermind is going to go. We know what we're going to talk about. We know a lot of the people that are going to be here. But there is uncertainty surrounding, like, what kind of questions are we going to get? You know, are we going to have anybody come in that's never come in before? There's always questions. Anytime you do something, there is some level of uncertainty. That's just the way it is. For most, so for people on the lower end of the drive to 5, uncertainty results in lack of action. Now, when you don't take action, you don't get results. When you don't get results, what happens is you get proof that you don't have to do it, or you're not capable of doing it. Okay? So imagine, you know, your goal right now is to start going to the gym. Let's just say COVID is gone. We're back to living our lives and we want to go to the gym. Okay. I don't know what to do. I don't know what machines to use. I don't know if I'm going to get made fun of. I don't know what the gym is like. What do I wear? All of that. Now, all of that is playing in your head, and that is creating a lack of action. That lack of action is then holding you back from results. You're not going to get any results because you're not changing your behavior. That then proves that I'm not capable of going to the gym. Okay? That is where I lived for a long time. If you're low on the drive to 5, there's a chance that you have lived there as well. But what happens when you insert belief? Just a little bit of belief, and you can borrow this from people. You're always going to have the uncertainty of results unless you really, really put in your 10,000 hours. Like, there are very few things where I'm not worried at all about what's going to happen. Like podcasting, I'm pretty confident. When I'm in the gym, like that's kind of my home. I'm not uncertain of anything. I don't really care because I've spent so many hours there. But if you borrow the belief, like I had to when Alan said, Kev, this Brendan Burchard event will change your life. If you miss this, you will regret it. Everything's going to be fine. Like, you can handle this. That's belief. That's confidence. I borrowed that. So when I had that belief and that confidence, I took action. When I took action, I got actual results. I got feedback that, like, oh, wow, this is like a whole new world. Like, I genuinely belong here. Mia's in here. I met Mia. Mia and I connected. We were crying. That was incredible. I met some really amazing people, and I locked in some possibilities that I never had before. So I got feedback, which then proved to me that you are very capable of doing these things you want to do. And the only thing, the only difference between the two is that little bit of belief and confidence. And for the longest time, I borrowed it from Alan. I borrowed it from people around me because I needed somebody to kind of show me the way. I always say that if you can start helping somebody and just get the momentum going for them. If you can just get the momentum going for them and show them that it's not impossible, number one. Number two, you've done it before. Then it's far easier for them to take that chance. And they know that they're supported. That's the other thing too. So when I first saw this, I realized that so many people are tricking themselves into thinking that they're stuck because they're forcing themselves to be stuck. When Alan and I always say this, you want feedback. Sometimes it hurts, of course. Of course it hurts. But would you rather check your bank account and find out that you are low on funds, or wait 6 months and then be bankrupt and not be able to fix it? That is what you're going to get when you get feedback. And you get to decide what to do with the feedback. But if you're not getting feedback, you're just listening to the story that you've already been telling yourself. And that's what I did for a long time.
So fire Kev. I wrote out some things. So Kevin and I were recording earlier today. You guys know we record on Mondays, and we were talking about this mastermind. And we were thinking, like, first of all, does anyone have any questions so far? Anything at all. You're going to have a chance to ask questions at the end as well, but we do have a hard stop right at 7. We went a little over last week, but
We're setting a bad example if we go over.
right. So if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt and just ask for the floor. The better the questions, the better the mastermind will be. So we were talking earlier and we were thinking of ourselves, like, where has this really changed our life? And one thing came into my consciousness earlier. There's a book called The Self-Made Billionaire Effect. And it basically studied the common patterns between all billionaires. And what I found really fascinating was this one chapter that I keep going back to, where it said the number one commonality of a billionaire is that they can hold two seemingly opposing ideas in their consciousness at the same time. And I've always found that so fascinating. So the drive to 5 is basically that. In other words, you have be fully present and in the moment, right? Which is great. But you also have make sure you're strategizing for your future. Okay? If you only strategize for the future and never live for the moment, you're out of balance. That's not good. If you only live in the present and never think moves ahead, you're going to lose big, right? So the drive to 5 is understanding where these extremes are and then making sure you're leveraging them in your daily decision making. So I'm going to give you some examples. Kevin is very warm and loving by nature. He's always wanted to be a really good dude. He's always been a little bit more focused on the present than me. Here's the issue. He naturally attracts people like that. That's not a bad thing, but he doesn't naturally attract people that are more future oriented, that are more results driven. Because he might think, if he's in self-doubt, he might think those people are arrogant. He might think he doesn't like those kinds of people. And then these people might think these people are wrong. Nobody's wrong. It's called ignorance. Nobody's wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's righty and there's lefty. Okay? There's feminine and there's masculine. And there's no right or wrong. We all have all of them. And so if you've heard of Kevin and I's PMES system, or I want to give credit where it's due. Alex Hinkle, Kevin, and I all kind of co-created that when we were in Florida. But to me, physical and mental is over here, and emotional and spiritual is over here. If you're more emotional and spiritually driven, that's a wonderful thing. You tend to care about love and warmth and the experience, and you tend to be more present, and you tend to be more feminine. There's nothing wrong with that. All guys and all girls have some feminine and some masculine. I have very many feminine qualities because I grew up and was raised by incredible women. But I'm naturally over here, and I know that. Okay, so the problem is that what if we're playing someone else's game? What if our true nature is masculine, but we've been playing a feminine game? What if our true nature is feminine, but we've been playing a masculine game? What if we learned how to make this relationship actually work? That's what has helped Kevin and I the most over time. We finally realized that okay, here's another example, short-term profitability versus long-term growth. I know we're going to be successful in the long run, so I'm not that concerned with whether or not we make this $100 today. But you need to be concerned with that. I remember one of my main mentors, I asked him one time, what's the biggest challenge of being CEO? Because he's the CEO of many very successful, tech companies. One example was iRobot for a time. Now, I asked him that, and he said, honestly, balancing profitability in the short term with the long-term vision of the company. I treat all humans like businesses too. Businesses should be at the service of others. And to me, if you're not focused at all on the short term, you're going to do what I did. You're going to be landscaping for an extra couple $100 to pay your bills on the side when you want to be, the next Tony Robbins. Or if you're only focused on the now and making sure you're only making money now, you might not be building your resume, but you're maybe one good example of this, and I hope this doesn't hit anyone's heart negatively, but let's say you are in the service industry and you make really good money as a waiter. One of my clients was a waiter and he made great money, but the problem is he wasn't necessarily building a resume. And so how do we balance these two? I've always been very heavy on the future. Right now, I'm literally thinking about what I'm going to look like, feel like in the decade. My decisions right now are focused on what the decade's going to look like. That doesn't mean you're supposed to be that way, but I'll tell you what, if you're not that way, get around it. Kevin helped me become more relatable, helped me understand human beings, helped me connect. And honestly, without him, I would never have met Emilia, who is someone who I cannot even explain to you guys how much I care for her. And many of you have met her. Without Kevin, there's no chance that would have happened because Emilia would never have been with an arrogant guy, nor should she. And honestly, I helped Kevin become successful. Guys, find someone who's the opposite of you. Find someone who's heavy righty and find someone who's heavy lefty. And remember that you might have an aversion at first to that type of person. Many of you probably connected with Kevin more than me at first. Kevin's really good at connecting with other people.
Understand.
He's more relatable. But there's certain things that I've brought to the table where it's like, oh, I never thought of that before. These people are going to challenge you. These people are going to – go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing too is you have to kind of in a way, you have to make sure that the other person has something that you value. Alan valued humility. I valued long-term thinking and success. I'll never forget, we were at a party. Alan and I were at a party when we weren't like – we were friendly. We didn't hate each other anymore, but I didn't talk to him really. And he showed up. He was jacked. He had a beautiful girlfriend, and he worked for himself. And I was like, whoa. Tell me about this. Like, tell me what this life is about. He had something that I valued. Now, I've always been the humble guy who is just kind of like, I'm just whatever. You know, I've always been trying to be very humble and down to earth and connect with people. And I think Alan wanted a little bit of that. So you kind of do have to have a reason to be in the room because it is uncomfortable at first. I mean, it can be uncomfortable when it was hard for me in the beginning because Alan believes so much that I remember we were in Florida. Was this before we went to HPA? It was, wasn't it?
Did we live with T-Mac before or after that? No, we went to HPA with T-Mac, man. So it had to be.
It was after that.
It was after that
because we went back down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
We drove 5 hours to Southern Florida. We did some interviews with Eddie Pinero of Your World Within, a buddy of ours. And we're driving back like 5 hours. It was 2:30 in the morning. And I was like, Alan, imagine what would happen if like we just did all this for nothing. And he looked at me and I was laughing. He looked at me so serious. I've never once thought about that, Kevin. Like, what do you mean you've never thought ever? You've never ever thought about failing? That's what I used to think of every single day. So it's almost like, and I'm sure we'll do a mastermind on the 5 love languages at some point. I'd love to do that. But it's almost like you're speaking a different language. Like you're so confident, you have so much belief when I didn't grow up that way. So you do have to kind of have an ulterior motive for being there. And as long as it's a good one, like we want to change the world. And imagine if we didn't stick through some of those harder times. Imagine if we didn't understand like, this is who Alan is. He's different, but it doesn't mean he's bad. And I think the other beautiful thing is like, I know when Alan's arrogant. He knows when I'm being insecure. Mm. And you can kind of call that person out on that and be like, you mind if I talk about the speech?
Oh, please do.
Sure
yeah.
Right?
No,
so,
dude, air it all out. We're good.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody, Mo, I think you were there. I don't know if anybody else was at Confident Women Consortium, but Alan was doing his speech at the table that we sat at like 5 minutes before people got there, and then in the bathroom stall after people got there. I did my speech like a month in advance. And
not my proudest moment.
No, right. But so everybody always says to Alan, oh, you did such an amazing job. And I'm always like, dude, that was not good for you. But that's the beautiful thing that we have, because I know he's confident enough to handle that, and he needs to be humbled because that event should have humbled him, but it didn't, because he's good enough to get by. Right. And it's that balance of understanding who this person is and realizing this is what he needs to be humbled. He needs feedback because he didn't get enough. It's not going to change his behavior. So he's going to do the same thing next time, which you did, but it went well.
I'm doing less and less of that though. I've been prepping more. It's interesting. And that's also why I track my numbers too, is because I'm very mastery driven. The problem is like, just because you are good enough to get by, what Kevin told me was this. He's like, I'm like, dude, my speech was great. Everybody loved it. He's like, yeah, but what if you did prep? And it's
I said, did you love it? Does it matter what everybody else thinks? Of course. But Brendan Burchard, when he walks on that stage, he wants to blow people away. He doesn't want to be good enough. He wants to be the best in the world. How does the best in the world prep? I always say we're going into a fight. Wait, before a podcast episode, we're going into a fight. We have to know all of this person's moves. We're going into a speech. We have to know who the people are. It's important. But again, most of my prep has come from anxiety and fear of not being good enough. If I can harness that in a good way, we're going to be fine. But
so Amy, thank you for putting that in the chat. Does anyone know Sierra Scott? I just want to make sure. I don't know if I recognize that name before we let her in.
I feel like we should be good with the password and all that.
I know Sierra.
You know
You know
Sierra?
Sierra Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Sierra.
All right, let her on in. Thank you, Amy, for asking. I appreciate you.
As
So-
long as you guys don't have the screen share ability, you'll be fine. Like as long as you guys have that locked.
I have it locked.
That is
Okay.
locked.
So
then you guys should
only
be fine.
co-hosts can screen share. Thank you, B. But some people do end up shouting out profanities and stuff. So the same screen share thing won't happen, but other things could. So, but thank you guys. All right. So one other quick story I want to tell. Does anyone have any questions so far?
I had a question around how, I mean, you guys have a great partnership. Obviously, it's been very fruitful for both of you. How do you find those people? And also, how do you know when to invest in them? Because, Alan, you could have easily been like, you know, this person maybe is trying to take something from me, or I'm going to not really come out of this with anything.
Interesting. I really appreciate that question. That's
Great question.
That's a vulnerable question. So again, that comes down to what Kevin said about they have something that I value. And this is where you got to trust your intuition. And I think what's interesting is, and you guys have probably heard me say this on the podcast before, I think that all struggles in relationship come down to three main things. Number one, there's either goals in conflict, or number two, there's core values in conflict. Number three, I've recently realized is that there's awareness that's not on the same page. So if someone's aware of something that you're not, but you're not aware they are, one example is like, let's say I have an electrical engineering degree and I have grown up with techies my whole life, but you don't know that, and you start trying to teach me something techie, it's like you have to level set and you have to realize, and that's why those uncomfortable conversations, and this is another thing I wanted to bring up as well, which I think this is a good opportunity. Vulnerability is how you drive to 5 in partnerships. So Cynthia, it was you who asked that question, right?
Yep.
Okay. So with Kevin, he had things that I value in terms of, I've always been extremely heart-driven in my intentions. And when I got in that car accident 5.5 years ago, when I started to really change my life and I had so much regret, I realized that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I am no longer going to be playing this game for anything other than positive impact. Like, I care about people and I want to help them win. And that is what I consider success today. I mean, we were on a team call earlier this week and I said, we call it the 25 Jeffings. And I've been doing this with my clients now too. It's like, where are the kinks in our hose of positive impact? Where are we not? And it's actually interesting. If you guys ever want to really feel bad about yourself, don't do this unless you're like over here. You can go and try to figure out the 25 ways that you're really screwing up. But to get back to the partnership thing, I think that I trusted my intuition and we had such a mutual vision. So if this is the true north and this is the drive to 5, this is your foundation. I think Kevin and I would never have been able to achieve our dreams without each other. And I believe that's how the law of attraction actually should work. I believe the law of attraction doesn't work if you're being arrogant or if you're being self-doubt. The people in self-doubt needs to step up and have the courage to really be themselves and express their truth. The people that are arrogant need to stop basically thinking they're good by default. They need to really lean into looking in those mirrors. So for me, my growth has been a lot of inner growth, like looking in the mirror of like, are my actions aligned with my core values and things like that? But to answer your question in a simple way, even though that was very long, I believe Kevin and I succeeded because we were willing to be vulnerable with one another. And in those vulnerable conversations, we realized that we're actually very similar in terms of core values and we had a mutual mission.
From the beginning too. Like that,
Yeah.
I think it didn't take us a long time to like connect. And again, I want to change the world. Okay, who else do I know that wants to change the world? Oh, I happen to grow up in the same town as somebody who already left his job. He is a professional speaker. He's all these things. Like, let me see, if I can get around him. We value fitness, right? We value that. We value being good men, good boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have so many of the same core values. And the other thing too is we're easy to get along with. Like, when we travel together, it's
the best, man.
It's so like, I'll drive the whole time. I don't care. I'll drive 12 hours. I don't care. We find a gym in the middle somewhere. We'll eat Domino's or In-N-Out Burger every day. It's just like, not only,
when we're lifting.
right. When we're lifting. Well, right now, I had pizza last night. So, it's not only do I want to change the world with this person, but it's will I enjoy doing it? Because everything we talk about is lifestyle design. If you don't want to work 16 hours a day, make sure you don't design your life so you have to. Now, is there going to be a season where you have to? Yes, we've all been there. We've all been there. But if you're thinking to yourself, like, when this happens, I'll get a new business partner, you're already screwing up. I've never once thought, I don't think this is ever going to end. I don't want it to ever end. I genuinely don't. I want us to go do speeches together. I want us to do consulting together, all of that. But that's because this is our life. This is our life, and I'm so happy that it is. We were talking about that today. Like,
Dude,
some days
none of it would have been possible without the partnership.
No.
Yeah.
I would still be doing what I was doing because I didn't have the confidence to start. So I wanted to give a couple other examples too of the short-term versus long-term thinking. So we've had when David Meltzer, who is our mentor now and he sponsors our podcast, he said, hey, I want to sponsor your show. I just want like a 15-second pre-roll of you talking about me. And Alan and I were like, okay, we have to figure out a way to create that. I stayed up until like 4:00 in the morning creating that, when that's not something that Alan typically does. I'm really good at saying like, this has to get done today. I'll stay up as long as it takes, where Alan's really good, and I'm starting to get really good at this, the consistency every single day. And Alan's getting far better at saying, this is what has to get done today, in terms of like, is it the most productive day I ever had? Maybe not. Is it the most productive way to get this thing done? Yes. So that's another thing too, like short-term versus long-term. Yeah, you always want to have the long-term vision, but Alan has said on several occasions, like, I'll live in a shoebox if I have to. And I always say, that's great, but you don't have to. Like, you don't have to live in a shoebox if you don't want to. And so we always drive to 5. At any time I'm like at one pole and Alan's at the other, we say, okay, this is a drive to 5 moment. We have the ability here to drive to 5. What are you actually thinking? This isn't going to work because of this. And Alan will say, like, well, it's definitely going to work. Okay, this is drive to 5. Like, what's the most likely scenario that's actually going to happen? Let's drive to 5 on that.
So one
Can
thing
I pose a question for you guys?
Indeed.
Please.
So what if you're lower on or earlier in your journey, right? And you are on either end of the spectrum, but let's say you don't have someone else to be able to be your counter. So what steps would you say for those people who maybe don't have someone to drive them to the middle?
So the key is understanding what the other person values. So if you are a lefty,
are you
right,
trying to get a close, it depends. Are you trying to get a close partnership, or are you?
No. I'm saying if you don't even have anybody, but you're trying to get to 5. So you guys balance each other out, because he pushed you one way and then he got pushed the other way.
Yeah.
So what should those people do who maybe they don't have someone to counterbalance them? What should they be doing to get more towards the middle?
I would say if that person was in this group, I'd say you're doing the right thing, personal development. Because what Alan brought to me was not only the belief, but like anytime I'm looking for a book suggestion, I text Alan. Why? Because Alan is way more M than me. He was way more M. He definitely still is, but I'm trying to catch up. So he's always been more quote unquote intellectual. He went to WPI. He's computer engineer. Like, he's very, very smart. So you're doing the right thing by learning. And we'll do another one on this, the PMES system, and like how it gets out of whack if you do too much with one thing. I would say consistently learning, because that's going to get you in the room with people who are on the opposite of you.
So I think it's understanding the benefits of each too. So you need to understand what the other person values. And here's the interesting thing. So with Kevin and I, if I stayed arrogant, in order for Kevin and I to come together, I had to admit to myself that I needed a business partner to succeed. That's called humility. I need help. Kevin had to build the courage to actually be in a room with someone like me and sit in those difficult conversations where I'm challenging him consistently. So it both take courage. One takes humility, one takes a lot of courage. And so if he understands what I value and I understand what he values and the benefit of each, you're going to be more likely to win. So for example, if my focus is long-term vision of massive positive impact, And Kevin asks me that question, like, what are you focused on? What do you care about? And he just starts to really listen. And he understands that my main focus is like that. He's going to try to add value to my life in that regard. Because this needs to be a win-win. I am so convinced that if a relationship or a partnership or a friendship is not a mutual win-win based on what each party values, and it isn't a drive to 5, I'm convinced that it won't be a sustainable thing. And so Kevin and I was a win-win from the beginning. And in the beginning, we didn't know this was happening, but he helped me so much in the gym, guys. Like, we used to work out together, and I used to think I work hard in the gym. Again, 10. And then you get around Kevin, you go, oh my God, like, he's so next level. He used to literally like push me 4 or 5 reps past what I would ever do alone. I literally used to say, I don't want to work out with other people because they'll slow me down. Not true. I was working out with people who slow me down. When I work out with him and Matt, it's not even close, guys. It's not even close. And so I had to have the humility of like, I need people like him, and that's what I care about. And he has what I care about, and vice versa. So one of the things that I wanted to say as well, I want to give an opportunity, because there's a lot of focus here on the benefits of the success side, but there's so much benefit to the warmth side that I want to highlight here. So one of my close friends reached out to me not long ago and gave me some really difficult feedback to swallow. And I went to Kevin. So yeah, maybe Kevin comes to me for books, but I went to Kevin and I said, listen, man, this is such a common pattern in my life. Like, I love this person so much, and I've gone out of my way for years for this person, and they still are upset with me. Like, this is such a common theme. And what he said is like, you're not looking at it from the other angle. You're seeing it from this way. So if I'm seeing only the value of our friendship as success, but the other person likes fun, unique experiences or quality time, like, of course, if they're in the friendship for quality time, I'm probably not going to be a great friend. Honestly, if you're in the relationship for success, I'm probably going to be a really good friend. And I'm not trying to be arrogant with that, but that tends to be where I focus. Now, what is success is another story, and we can do that another time. But what Kevin said is, you haven't learned the lesson yet. And the lesson was simple. Look at it from the other person's point of view based on what they value. If they are in the friendship for quality time and love and connection, of course they're going to be upset. Because I'm look at all the things I've done for you. And I did help this person get very successful. I coached them for a time. Okay. And I'm looking at that. Like, I crunched your numbers. We went through your analytics. Like, you're killing it thanks to a lot of the investment that I poured into you. But that's not what he's looking at. And so Kevin said, you need to look at it from the other point of view. And so I think we're all guilty of this. I think we're all guilty of not having empathy for the other side, because we've all been wired a certain way, and we think the other side is wrong. It's like Republican, Democrat. It's like, it's all crap. Like, the only problem is no one understands both sides and the benefits of both sides. I think both sides have strengths and weaknesses. What if you could develop all the strengths of the 10s and none of the weaknesses? Self-belief, undying self-belief, great strength, weakness, arrogance.
Right? And it changes too. That's the thing. Like, you're never, just because I'm closer to 5, in a lot of days I'm very close to 5. Like, my belief has never been, for the first time in my life, I believe in myself. I believe anything is capable. That's never been a thing for me. But you'll also, knowing this, when Alan and hypothetically Alex Think, who just signed on here, are talking business, they know more about business than I do. I probably, and this is fine, and this is to be expected, I may crawl down the drive to 5. I may get less confident in that moment because this is out of my comfort zone. But you better believe, if we're in the gym, or we're talking about podcasting, or we're talking about fighting, or something that I know a lot about, my drive to 5, I might actually go too far by 5. It might say, like, listen, you have no idea. I've said that to Alan before. Like, we argue about, he's like, oh, you better go practice falling down. And I will get arrogant and say, Alan, I would literally kill you. I mean that. But, like, that's not right. I shouldn't say that. But sometimes in certain arenas, you are more likely to get arrogant. And
right.
That's the other thing too, is like, I know Alan doesn't know as much as I do. So I actually should say, let me teach you some things and be nicer.
Right. And I've been in those moments too. So Alex, what's up, man? Thanks for joining, by the way. Just wanted.
What's up, bro?
Alex, how you living?
Alive and breathing, man. Everything else is cherry on top. You already know. I don't mean to party, but I decided to jump in a little late. So
we appreciate.
I want to give you a shout out because I told, obviously, everyone in this group, we've been mentioning the PMES system. This is Alex. He's the one who was in the room with us when we came up with that sort of framework. So this is the man, the myth, the legend behind the PMES system. Okay.
Oh, appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. So we're doing a little drive to 5 action here. Kev, I wanted to ask you an example. You mentioned that whenever there's a disconnect between us, usually one of us is either arrogant or insecure.
Yes.
So I would love to tell a story about when I thought you were insecure. And I would love it if you would tell another story of when you believe I was arrogant. And what's interesting is that we're all guilty of all of these in different arenas. Like, I guarantee you everyone in this room is arrogant in a certain arena. Guaranteed. And I also guarantee you there's self-doubt in a certain arena. For me, Kevin helped me in relationships because I had so much doubt in that arena prior to meeting Emilia. And the reason why is he's like, you've never really won before. Like, you've always had trouble in this arena. And he helped me understand that. So what's a time when I was arrogant, Kev, just to give a tangible example, in your honest opinion, where we drove to 5 on it after a vulnerable moment? And then I'll give one because I have a specific example.
Can you go first so I can think? I've already used mine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Used
my ammo.
So David Meltzer got an 800 on his math SATs. I've been around engineers and math people my whole adult life. And I love that environment. I thrive in that environment. When it comes to academics, it's always been my jam, especially math. And during our original coaching calls with Dave, Kevin, my main focus was keep rapport with Dave, make sure Dave understands that we're providing value to him, not only by asking him great questions, but helping him think and challenging him, and also getting him to realize that, like, we're the real deal. We're not going to stop, and we know what we're doing. Now, on those calls, I would tend to, at the beginning, before Kevin started getting a higher business acumen, I would run those calls a little more than him. And he would sometimes feel like he didn't get a voice.
Oh, yeah.
So these people, by the way, they don't feel heard. These people shout and they always get heard, typically, right? Because they have so much belief. That doesn't mean they're necessarily good. So be careful, because here's one thing I'll tell everybody here. The person with the most certainty has the most influence. Be very careful, because these people have a lot of certainty, but it's not based on merit. Look at people's actions and results, right? The loudest person in the room is not the person who's right. Now, in that moment, we had a call with Dave, and at the tail end of it, Kev wanted to ask for a specific contact that he thought would move our business forward. I believe his name was actually Jeff at the time. Or was it Tom?
Oh, it's Todd.
That you're working with Tom? Oh, Todd.
Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff, Todd. Okay. And after the call, Kev was a little upset because he didn't get a chance to ask. And I said to Kev, listen, why didn't you just jump in? And he's like, well, I didn't want to interrupt you. And I'm like, well, you should have, because that's important. So instead of admitting and taking ownership for the fact that he should have jumped in and had that ask that he was afraid to ask for, he was blaming me. And he thought I was being arrogant. And honestly, I even told him, drive to 5, man, like, I don't feel like I'm being arrogant. I don't feel like I was arrogant at all on that call. And I was almost in tears, because this is a common theme. Like, I was trying to do what I do best in that arena. And that was a moment where, you notice on the podcast, Kevin always says, when I'm insecure, I want to pick up on it and shift it. So instead of being insecure that, he's not quote unquote smart enough or whatever in business, why not read a business book? Why not start reading business books? And so then he, instead of getting upset with me, he says, what book should I be reading to be able to pitch and catch in these arenas? Another example would be at Brant's place, when you're just like, whoa, right? But that's a good example of, if you've ever felt that way, don't leave the room. That's the other thing. I've noticed this. And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant when I say it. I noticed that when we all have an aversion to that which we don't know. I don't know anything about cars. If you start talking about cars and plumbing and electricity and building homes, I know nothing. So I'm going to tend to leave the room. What I need to do is stay in the room and learn. This is an opportunity to learn. And what I've noticed is when some conversations get really intellectual, heavy mathematics, that kind of stuff, some people do leave. If you sit in it, though, you're going to learn. And that's Kevin's superpower, is sitting in discomfort, for sure. Absolutely.
Resilience. That's my jam. I don't know. I'm trying to think of another time for you. I mean, I know they're there, but I don't know. Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, this will be a good one.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Oh, no.
So we were in
Emilia
Florida.
just entered the room, too.
In Florida. Hi, Amelia. We were in Florida, and we had the opportunity to interview these 2 Marines, and they have a podcast called 2 Marines, 1 Mic. And Alan and I, first of all, I am the on-time guy. I am religious about being on time, keeping things If we're doing an hour podcast, I'll have you off in an hour. I guarantee it. It's my jam. But we started late. We were supposed to do a workout. We didn't do a workout. I have pre-workout coursing through my veins. Everything's all jeffed. And I noticed Alan is like way more bro than usual, like swearing a lot more. And, but again, I did get insecure because I didn't feel like I had a voice. Like, Alan, this is my podcast. I started this. You know that, right? Of course, that's, again, the story I'm telling myself. So the podcast ends up running late, and we're supposed to go do yoga, which I don't like being rushed. That's a whole thing. So we're packing up the table. We have to pack up all our equipment. We're walking to the car. And Alan's like, that went pretty well. And I was like, dude, that was brutal. Like, you swore so much. I don't even know if we're going to drop that episode. That was brutal. And he's like, nope, definitely not, man. Like, definitely didn't. I was like, you know what, man? Listen to it. Because I guarantee you did. Because I've done this 150 times. I know. So that was kind of our talk. And then we're both crying on the way over to yoga. Like, brutal. So what ended up happening was we listened to it, and Alan's like, yeah, you're right. Like, I definitely did swear a little bit more. And I was like, well, and this is a beautiful drive to 5 moment. Yeah, you did, but like, I shouldn't have freaked out. I was just unresourceful because the time was all over the place. You know, I didn't get
We hadn't slept in days, man.
Yeah.
Driving 5 hours. Yeah, it was rough.
So both of us learned a lesson in that. And I think that was kind of a lesson for both of us that we took with us, that like, Alan's always, he's more than likely not going to resort to arrogance. I'm going to resort to insecurity. It's just the way it is. And that's why people say, like, what's a good example of hyperconsciousness? Being able to shift it moment to moment. Knowing we're talking about business, I don't feel good. That's fine. That's you. That's a you thing. That's not the other people. That's a you thing. And you cannot fix a problem that you do not create in a lot of cases, especially internally. So for me, hyper consciousness is having extreme control over your thought process and your awareness, and understanding, this is my problem right now. I need to dig within myself and not throw blame at other people, because that's how you lose people.
So there's two main facets to this. Number one is understanding yourself and being able to shift it.
We got 5 minutes, Jeff. 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay.
So do we have any questions before we hammer this?
Okay. So there's two things that I want to say. One is, this is self-awareness. Understanding where you tend to default does not mean you're locked in. Like Kevin, for sure, his set point, even though he defaults to insecurity, is much higher than 0 now.
For sure.
So that's number one. Number one, you're not locked in. Number two, you have to understand your tendency and realize that in unresourceful states, you're going to go there. So I believe it's a protection mechanism. If you're in an unresourceful state, you're overwhelmed, you're unaware, you're going to go to arrogance, or you're going to go to insecurity. And that's going to hurt your relationships. So be very careful. Okay. Number two, communication. Remember who you're communicating with. I have many clients, and I often say this, I've learned more from my feminine clients than they've probably learned from me, because it helped me understand them at a deeper level. And it helped me understand why I wasn't connecting with those type of people. Now I understand them, and now I communicate to them in a way that they understand, and vice versa as well. So the key here is not only to understand yourself in terms of your own strengths and weaknesses, which we all have them, but to identify the people in your life and where they fall on this. If you're talking to someone who's super insecure, the last thing you're going to want to do is start toting all of your accolades. But if you're talking to me, lead with that. I'm going to be like, yeah, how'd you do it? Like, awesome. Right? As long as I'm not in a very unresourceful state. We've all been at 0. We've all been at 10. So there's also micro and macro. Like, if you caught me after watching Titanic, I'm probably over here, right? Just in my emotions. Then you don't start talking about your accolades. But generally speaking, understand who you're talking to. In the business world, credibility is built from results. Start talking about your results. Don't be modest in selling yourself. You want to go get a job? Talk about your results. If you're trying to connect with an intimate partner, and you're a guy and you're at a bar or at a restaurant with your girlfriend, you don't start immediately talking about how awesome you are. That's not going to connect if it's with a feminine energy. So the key is to understand the feminine, understand the masculine, and the righty and lefty part of yourself, and then make sure you're communicating effectively in every arena.
And be honest too. Like, this is a great framework, but if you leave here and say, like, I'm a 5 already, you're not, most likely. I mean, maybe in certain scenarios you are, but it's about that extreme ownership. The fact that I know when I get insecure and I'm able to admit it is the greatest thing ever for me, because I get insecure a lot. So it helps. And it was very difficult at the beginning, because again, I'm a tattooed bodybuilder who loves fighting. and like I'm insecure over this. Like that's not, something's wrong here. But you're only selling yourself short if you don't start to fix the holes in your game, for lack of a better term. And if you have people around you who support you, honestly, more than anything, this is a show of how lucky Alan and I both are for having the partner that we do in this business, because I never wanted to have a partner. This was supposed to be a Hyper Conscious podcast. Kevin does all sorts of things by himself. And when we started working together, I realized that this is so much better. And I think we can go way further together than we could separate. So
for sure.
If you can find somebody who matches with you in the drive to 5, you can definitely change the world for sure. That's our plan. So that's the goal. All right. Any questions? We got 2 minutes. Questions, comments, concerns.
Should we go over the homework?
What's the homework?
I think we should, in real time, talk about that.
What about this? What's the homework for this?
I think the homework should be understanding where you tend to be on the drive to 5, and then what's the action plan to get around someone who's got strengths.
How about some top 3 insecurities as well? Because that's the thing too. You might think that Alan's super confident. He doesn't have insecurities. He has insecurities.
Oh, for sure.
They're different than mine. So that's what I would say. I would say one part should be top 3 insecurities. Where do you get the most insecure and why?
Top 3 insecurities. One last thing too. I know we got to go.
Quickly.
Understand masculine and feminine. The intimate relationships, guys. Your intimate partner is most likely has strengths that are your weaknesses, and vice versa. If you don't learn how to communicate with them, it's going to be a struggle bus. Okay. Number 2 is identify where you are. And then I would say game plan on where you want to be. In other words, on where you want to be. So how do you get to 5? So if you're at a 3, how do you get to 5?
Get out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. All right, beautiful. Number 1. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Number 1, identify your top 3 insecurities. Remember, it's all avoiding pain. If you don't think you need a mentor, you're probably insecure to get in a room outside your league because you don't want to admit the truth that you are way out of your league, like me with Brendan Burchard, okay? Top 3 insecurities. Number 2, identify where you are right now on the drive to 5. And remember, it shifts arena to arena. Like Kevin was a 10, not a 10, but very confident in the gym. Game plan on where you want to be. In other words, who are you going to get around that has strengths where you're weak?
Fire. All right. So we appreciate you guys as always. You're the best. Thank you for joining. We had like 5 people in the waiting room at one point we didn't let in because we didn't know who they were. I got a bunch of messages, so we know who they are now. I just created a PDF, 7 questions that will change your life if you ask them to yourself. If you guys want that, just hammer your email in the box and we'll send it to you. But what are we going to do next week?
Dude, I think we should do the love languages.
5 love languages. Oh, my favorite. Okay. So that's what we're going to do next week. We'll do the 5 love languages, what it actually means to you, what it means to your partner. Because again, if your partner has different love languages than you do, you literally are speaking different languages. If they don't care about gifts and you're showering them with gifts and you're only seeing them once a month and they value quality time, in the wise words of Jeff, you be Jeffin'.
Way to end on that good note.
That's not bad, right?
Thank you all so much for coming. Put your emails in the chat box. Let us know in Hyper Conscious Nation if you have any questions. And
also what you want us to talk about too. If there's something that you've heard you want us to talk about, hammer it. We'll do whatever.
And if you have any remaining questions that didn't get answered, we'll go live in Hyper Conscious Nation. We'll answer. Thank you all so much.
We love you.
Hyper Conscious teams. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Hyper Conscious team, stay after.
For extra credit.
For extra credit.